Wow. Just wow. Literally, I have just finished doing the podcast interview with my guest for today, and I am recording right now while it's still fresh. The feeling that I have after interviewing this man, and I told him in the green room, this isn't live on the actual interview, that this was perhaps one of the podcasts where I've gotten most nervous. I mean, and we're talking since 2013 when I started podcasting. That's a lot of podcast episodes. And, he's intimidating, not from a standpoint where he actually is intimidating, but thinking about interviewing him with all of the success, with all of the experience that he's had. I wanted it to be a good experience for him as well as to give you the takeaways and make sure that I kind of harvested the gold that I had in front of me. I will have to rely on you to let me know if I have done that successfully or not. But we are talking about fitness marketing secrets and what our guest, who has been extremely successful, going from a dumpster diving life as a child to a multi-million-dollar businesses, plural, at this point in his life, and having to pivot again and again during his career. And now at age 48, where you can imagine this has been over a 25-year career, he's pivoted during the worst of it, just like you and I have, maybe more, depending on your experience level and depth of years in the fitness industry. But you're going to hear a lot, and I'm going to share with you something I want you to pay attention to. I think that no matter where you are, whether you determine success as part-time and being filled for 10 hours or 20 hours, or growing your revenue within the time that you're doing, learning to scale the business, not just exchange a dollar for an hour, whether it's a few hours or it's full-time, or you want franchises, you want to go really big, whatever your definition of success is, many times we don't do it if we're in a safe space. And I know that all too well. And I know handling stress and handling resilience better as well. Because when you've actually seen tragedy, when you've actually experienced stress up close and personal, if nobody's bleeding and nobody's dying, it's really not stressful. Bedros also commented on that. If you still are breathing, you're not dead. It's really not that bad a decision. My guest today is the one and only Bedros Keuilian. He's an American entrepreneur and a believer in the American dream. He and his family are immigrants who escaped communism, came to the United States to find freedom, opportunity, and a better life. Today, Bedros is a serial entrepreneur and investor in over a dozen industry-leading brands and businesses. He's the founder of Fit Body Bootcamp, 3 times listed in Inc. magazine as well as Entrepreneur Magazine's 100 fastest growing franchise brands in the world. Bedros is the author of the Wall Street Journal best-selling book, Man Up. And by the way, ladies, this is for you. Man Up, How to Cut the BS and Dominate in Business and in Life. Bedros believes in the power of the human spirit and uses the stage, TV, social media, his podcast, and his blog to share his immigrant edge and American dream story to help inspire audiences worldwide to get unstuck and reach their fullest potential. I can't wait to dive in, so let's go. Bedros, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Appreciate the opportunity.
We're going to hit the ground running. So you have mentored and coached hundreds of fitness professionals. You've done a lot of hot seat hosting and practical business model building. And the message that I hear you most talk about lately is about leadership and personal development. Am I missing that? First of all, correct me. Is that a part of your evolution, or is that where you feel the biggest need for fitness and health coaches is right now?
Yeah, great question. So as I've kind of gone through the journey, and I've literally been cut from the cloth of fitness. In fact, I started working out later in high school because I wanted to ask a girl out to the prom. And I knew if I lost weight, got fit the summer before prom, I would have a higher chance of making it to the prom with her. So that led me to kind of, after high school, getting certified and having this desire to be a personal trainer and work in fitness, nutrition, mindset. And the magical thing right there is mindset is what I saw. And you know this, being from the health space, that when we work with our clients and when we help them change and transform their body, that's why they come to us. They want to lose weight, they want to get fit, they want health benefits. But the secondary, and I think the higher value
Mm-hmm.
that they get, is a transformation in personal discipline and their self-worth, self-esteem, confidence. And when that happened with me, I kept thinking, gosh, this is all I want to do, is be able to help more people transform in terms of not the physical, but also the mental, emotional, discipline, etc., confidence. And so I started to really learn about that. I started to, before you know it, instead of just learning about exercise and nutrition and how the body builds muscle and burns fat, I started to dive into how why do people stick to a program? How is it that they can focus? How is it that some people can be consistent? Why is it that some people quit? Why do people emotionally self-sabotage? And as I learned about the story that we tell ourselves and these limiting beliefs that we might have that we buy into that are absolute false narratives, I realized breaking through those can help us not only transform our body, but improve in our relationships, make more money. And so my transition now, going fast forward 25 years, now I'm 48 years old. I started being a personal trainer when I was like 23. At 48, I look back and I go, gosh, all of my growth in business, in my ability to help and serve humanity, was a byproduct of me constantly breaking through beliefs, false narratives that I had about myself, both in business and my relationship with my wife, in every category of financial growth. And so this is why I stress leadership and personal development as the foundation for any kind of higher level development, whether you want to make more money or lose fat or have a better relationship.
Love that. Okay, now don't leave us hanging. Did you get the date? The prom.
Oh, well, as much as I hate to say this, I'm an introvert by nature, and so I came back. I came back senior year. I was down 34 pounds, and a young man, testosterone coursing through my body. Once I learned how to work out and eat right, the summer before senior year, I lost 34 pounds and put on a good amount of muscle. But I never had the confidence to ask Nakaya to the prom. So I
Mhm.
never did ask her. And so I never ended up going to the prom.
Okay, okay.
I wish I could lie and say, yeah, it was a smoking hot experience, but I would be lying to you.
Well, at least we have closure. We needed that. All
There
right.
you
Appreciate that.
go. Uh-huh.
Okay, so given that, I mean, you've got a lot of bandwidth and longevity in the fitness industry, and nobody potentially, maybe you, I don't know, did we see the pandemic coming? And how have things changed? So I love that you've got like this backstory. You can see what happened as you evolved and then as you helped so many others evolve their businesses. I mean, right now everything has changed. It's like who moved the cheese, and I think everybody feels a little bit like this year again is different, never been here. It's hard to project. And what's your advice to trainers about this moment that we're in right now?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So I did not see the pandemic coming, but I was prepared for the pandemic
Mm.
simply because being an immigrant to this country and growing up in Section 8 housing and government assistance, we really had to get creative to make ends meet as a family. So I saw so much resilience and resourcefulness. Those two R's are massively important for anyone that is an entrepreneur and wants to be able to become financially stout. Because if you can become resilient and you can become resourceful, then you will figure it out. And the figure it out muscle is something that we all need to develop through constantly putting ourselves through adversity. And
Mm.
you think about how do we grow our muscles? Well, we go into the gym, we're constantly pulling and pushing against resistance. And when we continue to do this and increase the weight, increase the sets, increase the reps, change the tempo up, our muscles begin to expand as a byproduct of the stimulus. Well, same thing happens in business. When you constantly put yourself up against competition, against recessions, against inflations, and sadly now we've all dealt with a pandemic. Who would have thought?
Hmm.
We thought that was left in the 1800s with those viruses that would kill thousands of people. The reality is that those who are willing to show resilience and get resourceful in the absence of resources will end up building those mental and emotional muscles, their leadership muscles, their entrepreneurial muscles, very much the same way we build our muscles in the gym. And so to me, I had gone through not only adversity as a young boy growing up in the United States. I came here when I was 6 years old, and English is a second language, and didn't understand the culture. We were broke, we were poor. My parents had to. Here's a great example of resourcefulness. One of the Section 8 housing complexes we lived in. At this point, I was probably 8 years old, so 2 years into being in the States, I got lice, and my parents couldn't afford lice treatment. And so my mom had to get resourceful. And so she had my dad siphon out gasoline from a parked car and washed my hair with gasoline to kill the lice. Another time, my dad discovered that grocery stores have these giant dumpsters behind them. And in these dumpsters, they throw away food that has expired, but hasn't necessarily gone bad yet. But since it's expired, they can't sell them. And so he would lift me up into the dumpsters, and I'd pull out bread and egg and milk. And if it hadn't spoiled yet, we would eat it. We'd take it home and eat it. Those are all examples of being resilient and being resourceful in the absence of having the resources. And so then you fast forward to the 2008 housing market crash, right when I had started Fit Body Bootcamp, our international fitness franchise. It's like, gosh, right now the housing market's crashing in 2008. And I'm thinking about, what do I do to create a new business model? And that's where the idea of Fit Body Bootcamp had come. And while I was scared and I was nervous, I knew that if I didn't do it, then I would likely end up living on my parents' couch as a grown man who was married and already had two kids, two
Hmm.
little babies. And so for me, the thought of having to lose our house, because at the time in 2006, 7, 8, I was coaching and mentoring gym owners who ran one-on-one personal training studios. And as you can imagine, when the housing market crashes in 2008 and people stop using personal trainers, and these personal trainers want to stop using my coaching services. And so I came to a fork in the road very quickly where I said, gosh, there's these outdoor boot camps that are taking place. It seems like now would be a good time to take the outdoor boot camp and bring it indoor and make it a legitimate business model, because people can't afford $600 to $800 a month working with a one-on-one personal trainer, but they can afford, $149, $200 a month to train in a group environment. But,
Hmm.
then of course the what if monster comes in, right? The negative self-talk. Well, what if this doesn't work out? Why would anyone want to rent out a space and build out a group training facility when they could just use the local park or the gym or a parking lot somewhere for free? And so, but I remember thinking to myself, if I don't do this and I continue to lose coaching clients because these trainers are canceling my services, I will end up on the couch at my parents' house. And I wasn't about to accept that. So again, getting resourceful and thinking in a resilient fashion and using the model of FIO, figure it out, I decided that I'd rather take the risk of figuring out the bootcamp model and making this into a franchise than succumb and accept defeat and end up living with my parents until I can get back on my feet. Because that becomes a pattern as well. Because once you accept defeat once, it's easier for you to accept defeat the second time and third time and fourth time. Once you show resiliency and resourcefulness and the ability to figure things out once, it's easier to do it the second and third time. So we know that momentum is a real thing. And so I've always kind of felt this this desire to lean into the momentum of taking action, figuring it out, being resourceful, being resilient. I know it comes from the times when I was young and we had to figure things out in order to get by in this country, little did I know that the suffering that we would experience when I was young taught me the skills of figuring things out and being resourceful and resilient, and came in handy today, even with the pandemic. By this point, now you fast forward to 2020, moving away from the 2008, 2009 housing market crash. Fit Body Bootcamp grew massively throughout 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. And then, of course, right around 600 plus locations worldwide, the pandemic hits in 2020. By this point, I've got so much experience and maturity under my belt. Don't for a moment think, Deborah, and I don't want your audience to think that Bedros just went into it galloping in on his white horse to save the day. Every day of the pandemic, on March 16th, in fact, of 2020, I announced to our Fit Body Bootcamp owners worldwide that we need to shut down for 2 weeks. We need to flatten the curve. This is a very deadly virus, because that's what we knew about it at that time. But I also knew, as someone who has gone through adversity before and has always seen that a plan B is an important thing to have, I told the CEO of my company, Bryce, I said, Bryce, while this might be a 2-week shutdown, I have a feeling we need to plan for something if it's somehow longer. And by the time it extended to 4 weeks instead of 2 weeks, we had already created a complete online training system for Fit Body Bootcamp owners to pivot to online training so they can put their clients in a Facebook group and use avatar nutrition and run live workouts at their Fit Body Bootcamp locations that they would broadcast into those Fit Body Bootcamp or those Facebook groups, and their clients would still get results by working out at home, using avatar nutrition, and then, of course, getting the mindset and coaching, et cetera, so that they can keep making money. And so we did the pivot. Boy, it was scary. Same doubt monster showed up. The same levels of negative talk show up. But now I have a track record of saying, all right, I can shut down negativity faster. I can control my negative self-talk easier. I can lean into risks more because I've got a track record of leaning into risks over the years. And so that track record, that momentum, in fact, jokingly, one day I told Bryce in our leadership meeting, we have about 7 leaders here at Fit Body Bootcamp, all departmental leaders, et cetera. And during the pandemic, pre-pandemic, we would meet once a week, every Tuesday. A level 10 meeting is what it's called. And it's right out of the book Traction by Gino Wickman, the EOS system. I think any business that starts doing over $1 million a year should use Traction and EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, to scale even bigger. And so with that, we're doing our level 10 meetings once a week. But when the pandemic started, we started doing a level 10 meeting twice a day, just to kind of show you how we had to time collapse, because moment by moment, news was changing. In these states, hey, Texas, Florida, whatever, you can open up and run your business. And these other states, you can't. And since we had Fit Body Bootcamp locations all over the country and all over Canada and US, we had to make fast decisions. So with that in mind, we're meeting twice a day for our level 10 meetings. And about, I don't know, maybe June or July of 2020, everybody was, we had a little down period, right? Because in 2020, we lost 218 franchise locations. And let me tell you how scary that is. You've built this brand. You've been growing it for all these years. You're adding 6 to 8 locations per month. Now, within 5-6 months, you've lost 218 locations. There's no end in sight to the pandemic. And soon my leadership team was just like, dude, this is an uphill battle for us. And it seems like at the rate that we're losing, by mid-2021, we will be a brand that no longer exists. And I had to remind them that, by the way, guys, we're not worried about this pandemic and we're not worried about this virus. We are the virus. As far as I'm concerned, the virus needs to be worried about us. The virus needs to wear a mask around us. The virus needs to go get immunized against us. Let's not forget that we are the virus, that we are going to be the opposition to the virus. And I had to give them a checkup from the neck up, because I realized that I've got young leaders in their late 20s and early 30s, and they hadn't seen the level of adversity that I had seen. So they were starting to slowly accept defeat. And don't mistake for a moment that like I was resilient throughout the entire time. I had times at home throughout 2020 that I would just gripe to my wife and say, what the hell is going on? I'm going to need a few cocktails to be able to process through this thing. Maybe this is the end of Fit Body Boot Camp. But the next morning I would wake up and I would go to battle against this virus as though I was the virus trying to kill that virus. And so that is the mindset that someone needs to be able to survive as an entrepreneur. I know it's all about, well, competition is good, competition is fair, let's all be kind and generous and sweet and all that. But I'm telling you right now, you got to get your armor on. You got to get suited and booted, and you better go and fight like you're the virus against the virus if you want to survive in the environment that we're in now and the environment that we're headed to. We went from a inflation, we are now in a recession, and we are headed into a depression far greater than the 2008 and 9 housing market crash. But let's not forget that money never goes away. Money simply exchanges hands, and it is our job to find the people with money and offer them our services in exchange to solve the problems that they have. So as long as people operate through resiliency, through resourcefulness, through the ability to figure things out and problem solve, you will thrive out of the next 2, 3, 4 years of depression that's coming on.
I love that. And everything that you've said probably has taken a big bite out of my question. So you just anticipate so very well. I
Right.
want to back. No, please. I mean, it just means we're going to go that much deeper. But I love so much of what you've said in it. And that was such a big question. I mean, you are talking right now a lot in your YouTube videos, podcasts about resilience and the need to put yourself in those stressful places, those conditions where there is some resistance and conflict so that you can grow like a diamond, right? Having to
Mhm.
be in the rough. And you were there. And share a really quick story that, um, you know, I've been in this for 38 years. And yet there was a time when I wanted to operate my own business, but I was safe, secure, part time job, husband, didn't really have to make the money. So I talked about it a lot, but I did nothing. It wasn't even a side hustle. Embarrassingly, it was a hobby. No bank would have ever invested in me because the books didn't look good. It was a loss. And, it was just entertainment when you get really down to it. And until I pulled the plug, cut the cord, quit, left everything, said goodbye, and ended up that first year scared AF, had to put my house up for sale. But then there was no choice. It had to work. I didn't have any inkling of doubt because I couldn't look back. I had to look forward at what I was going to do next and what I was going to do after that. And I would never have done it had I not been in the moment of panic that I was in. So huge. One of the things you also talk a lot about is the need to make rapid decisions. So I want to come back to that. And you've talked about how much we've all had to do it, or those who survived did it. Pivoting, pivoting, pivoting. Boy, I got nauseous off of that word during the pandemic. But, speak a little bit to that. I mean, what makes someone more able to make decisions quickly?
That's a really good question. And in fact, when I wrote my book, Man Up, in 2018, it came out and became a national bestseller, Wall Street Journal bestseller. In the book, I really talked about one of the 6 pillars of high performers and leadership is decisiveness. The best leaders that I've met and that I've seen, and the highest of performers that I've known, have this ability to be decisive. Now, notice I didn't say they make the right decision every time. I said they
Mhm.
have the ability to be decisive. They make quick decisions. They make decisions off their gut. The reason they're able to make their decisions off their gut is because they understand 2 things. One, they've got a track record. And each time you make a decision and you're right, it builds confidence. When you build confidence, you build reputation with yourself. Your reputation is compounding again on your confidence. So confidence, consistency, reputation, confidence, consistency, reputation. And for example, Deborah, if I had a bad reputation and you had heard bad things about me and a mutual friend wants to introduce us, you might be hesitant in meeting me, because you might say, hey, I've heard really bad things about Bedros. His reputation is pretty poor in terms of what I heard. So your reputation with yourself matters. And if you're the type of person that makes a promise to yourself, I'll give you an example. Every night, we all make a promise to ourselves that we're going to wake up at a certain time by setting our alarm. And most people, I believe something like 82% of humanity hits the snooze button first thing in the morning. So if I set the alarm for 5:30 in the morning at night, but then at 5:30 my alarm goes off and I hit the snooze button, I am eroding the reputation that I have with myself, and thereby I'm eroding the confidence that I have with me. And if I have no confidence and poor reputation, then I am not going to be a decisive person. So confidence comes from decisiveness comes from having a strong reputation and confidence with yourself. And number two, having a track record of wins. And so people go, well, how do I create a track record of wins? It's kind of scary. And the reason it's scary for most people, the idea of making a decision quickly, is because everyone's so black and white. They think that if I make the wrong decision, it's going to be embarrassing. It's going to cost me a lot of money. It's probably going to look bad on me. I won't be able to bounce back from it. And when it's that grim, then of course I may not want to make a decision either. But the reality is, let's not forget that Bill Clinton, how else do I say this? Bill Clinton, our sitting president at the time, cheated on his wife and had sexual relationships with an intern, and yet the entire country was very forgiving. And he was able to continue on. So one could say that he made a very bad decision, and yet he was able to course correct. And the reality is that unless that decision leads to death, that it is not a permanent failure. You might have a temporary defeat, but it is not a permanent failure. And when people stop looking at it as a potential of permanent failure and realize that all of life is a string of decisions, and the more decisive I can be, and the more wins I can have in terms of being decisive, the more confidence and higher reputation I will have with myself, then you begin to realize that, hey, if I make a bad decision, that's okay. It might cost me some time. It might cost me some money, but I can backtrack and then therefore make the right decision, make the opposite decision. And that's what I figured out is unless the end result is death, you can bounce back from it. And that's the beautiful thing. Now, people then ask me, well, how do I begin to build my decision-making muscles, Bedros? I go, simple. In the morning, you're going to have to decide what you're going to wear. Now, you could stand in front of your closet and decide, take 10 minutes to figure out, am I going to wear shorts or jeans? Am I going to wear long sleeves or short sleeves? Should I wear a hoodie or not? By doing that, you are teaching yourself to be indecisive. I got an idea. Just grab whatever you want. Grab your shorts, grab your t-shirt, grab your hoodie, and walk out the door. And if it's cold and rainy, lesson learned, tomorrow you might want to check the weather app and then make a decision accordingly. But if you can start making your small decisions quickly, and I'll give you another example. A client of mine, I coach high-level entrepreneurs. He goes, Bedros, you're not going to believe this. I realized that on date nights with me and my wife, we would sit there and go, well, I don't know. What day do you want to go on a date night? I don't know, Tuesday or Thursday, Wednesday or Saturday. And then so we'd go back and forth for hours. And then, we pick a date. Now it's, what do you want to eat? Are we going to go sushi or steak? And so now they're going back and forth on that, conditioning themselves to be indecisive. He goes, now I just set a date night and I say, hey, date night's Thursday and we're going to go to steak and we're going to go at 6 p.m. And if the wife has an issue with that, then I go, where would you like to go and when would you like to do it? And therefore teaching themselves to be decisive. So if we can start making the smaller decisions in our life quicker, then what we tell our subconscious mind is that, hey, when this person comes to a fork in the road and there's a decision to make, they make a quick decision. And believe it or not, the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between a small or big decision. It just knows that Deborah is decisive. And therefore, when she gets to a fork in the road and it's time to make a big decision, she will make the best decision for her. And if it ends up being the wrong decision, she knows that there is no such thing as permanent failure unless it's death, that it's only temporary defeat, and therefore she can backtrack and make the right decision. And knowing that is how we begin to build that decision-making muscles.
Ooh, that was a mic drop. Subconscious mind does not know the difference between a small or a big decision. Super cool. Okay, I want to talk to some thing, a mythological work-life balance, but I'm going to come back to that because you just talked a little bit about a couple of things. So earlier on, you said you're an introvert, which I find fascinating. But on that, you're also now in charge of multi-million dollar companies and just described you've got this team, level 10 meetings happening during the pandemic 2 or 3 times a day. So, what is it like as an introvert? I mean, a lot of our listeners are introverts as well. I am an introvert. I loved the pandemic. No more did I need to make excuses for not wanting to go to a social event I said yes to. I mean, it was just beautiful. But speak to leading, collaborating, networking, asking for help to get where you are as an introvert.
Yeah. In fact, I think the introverts are the most gifted of entrepreneurs and leaders. And I'll tell you why. We
Mm.
spend a lot of time inward. And so we do a lot of self discovery. We do a lot of self discussion. We do a lot of internal problem solving. Where the extrovert wants to be around a lot of people, wants to always be stimulated, and therefore is not doing a lot of self discovery. And I think you and I know this now with the experience that we have and the time that we have under our belt. Some of the best leaders and best entrepreneurs out there are very self aware. And some of the most self aware people, statistically uh, available, are introverts, especially introverts that are introverted, intuitive, feelers. Now I'm a thinker, so my letters are INTJ, introverted, intuitive, thinker, judicial. But if my T was an F, in other words, if I was an introverted, intuitive, feeler,
Yep.
judicial, I would be even more connected with myself. I would have even higher levels of self awareness. Because I would feel things instead of think through things. So, having said that, introverts organically are better leaders because we spend time inward and we're not always looking to get stimulated by outside environments. And so, if knowing that the introvert can do that, can become a better leader, can be a better entrepreneur. Now, the drawback to that is when we have to stand in front of our team and inspire them and motivate them like a great general would, guess what? That is where we have to bring out our Sasha Fierce. That is where the extrovert has the advantage. What I mean by that is Beyonce Knowles, an amazing artist and singer, but she's she's an introvert. Two, comes from a Christian family that is very conservative, and so when they told Beyonce that you have to get on stage and wear this lace and prance around all sexy like while you're singing, she goes, "Look, I love music, I love singing, but I can't do that. I come from a Christian family. I'm very conservative. I'm shy. I can't wear that." Well, this is what it's going to take if you want to become a really big pop star and you want to really impact people with your music. She goes, all right. Had some, I think from what I read, she had a few days to think about this. And she came back and said, look, Beyonce can't do this, but Sasha Fierce can. She created an alter ego. And,
Mm.
you could look this up on Wikipedia. It's amazing. If you Google who's Sasha Fierce, you realize it's Beyonce Knowles on stage or in front of the camera. She's a different person. She flips the switch. And so excuse me, I realized very quickly that as an introvert, my superpowers are that I can go inward and think and problem solve and really go deep into the layers and figure out why the situations are the way they are. We're really good mental chess players as introverts. Where our weaknesses, unlike the extrovert, we're not going to sit there and make a passionate toast or as like a general, scream at the top of our lungs. Here's why we're here and here's what we're going to do and attack and charge. However, we can bring out our inner Beyonce Knowles or Sasha Fierce. And I've learned that when I am on stage, when I'm on my podcast, when I'm on other people's podcasts, that I have to bring out my inner Sasha Fierce because ideally, in a perfect world, I'd be sitting on the leather couch that's here in my office with my laptop in hand and my iPhone next to me and a gallon of water, working quietly. But that
Good.
doesn't necessarily serve me when I have a message to put out to the world.
Mm.
That serves me probably 80% of the time because I can meet with my team one on one or my leadership team, and then my leadership team can go and disseminate the message to the people that they lead, etc. But by and large, the introvert does have to go and run meetings and get on stage and do these podcasts. And when you do, you have to be able to channel your inner Sasha Fierce. And I think every one of us have that. In fact, my therapist, Kevin Downing, said that in times of stress or chaos, our personality letters flip. So the introvert actually becomes an extrovert. Because we've done so much inner thought, inner processing. We know the answers better than most people around us. We've stayed in our business so long that we've mastered the thing that we do well, that when there is a danger, we are no longer silent. When there is a need, we are able to stand up and say, all right, folks, here's what we're going to do to get out of this disaster. And so knowing that you can do that, knowing that you can funnel or channel your inner Sasha Fierce, I think that we have to now then start working on that muscle. I'm convinced, Deborah, that everything is a muscle. Everything is a muscle. The fact that Tony Robbins and Ed Milet both complimented me by saying, you're a prolific speaker. And then I laughed to myself because, so Tony Robbins said you're a prolific speaker. Ed Milet said that you've got great mastery of the English language when I was on his podcast. And I'm laughing to myself. And Ed said, what are you laughing at? I said, I want you to understand that I'm a foreigner to this country. English is a second language to me. I had to lose my accent and learn the language before I could even begin to string the words together to be able to paint a word picture for you that makes sense. And he goes, you see what you just did there? I said, what? He goes, you articulated that so well. And so the point is, it's a muscle. Speaking is a muscle. I was the kid in elementary school that as soon as I was asked to stand up and read out loud from, a page in whatever book we were reading, I would start stuttering and falling over the words, and the kids around me would laugh. But I decided that I'm going to train that muscle over and over again until I become one of the best at mastering the English language. And so the question then becomes, what are you willing to master and not just be good at, not be a jack of all trades, to develop mastery in? And anything we develop mastery in, we can absolutely dominate.
Beautifully said. Okay, to the point. Yes, beautifully said. All right, I want to come back to work-life balance. So, I don't discount any listener who's here, but God forbid, if you're spending 30, 45 minutes listening to a podcast, I hope you're really serious about doing what you've just said, Bedros, and mastering what it is you're doing, even if you choose that success looks like being full for 20 hours a week. But for those trainers who do truly want to be successful, defined as profitable business as a bank would bet on, investors would be interested in, other businesses and brands want to collaborate with. What are your thoughts on that concept of work-life balance?
That's a very good question. I don't know if there's such thing for an entrepreneur's work-life balance, but I do know that there's a work-life mix. And I know that from firsthand experience. And so when I say work-life mix, I mean, I don't travel as much to speak these days, and that's by design. And when I am asked to speak, it's a $50,000 speaking fee, and 100% of my speaking fee goes to Shriners Children's Hospital, because I've been donating to them for the last 12 years now. We've donated millions of dollars, and I've just committed my speaking fee to Shriners. But I raise my speaking fee so that I can speak less, stay home more with my kids, who are now 15 and 17 the last couple of years, actually since right before the pandemic, since 2019. But building up to 2019, I was away speaking easily 3-4 times a month. And so, as you know, seminars and speaking events take place on weekends, which means that I was gone most weekends. And so the private school that my kids went to, my wife and I had a deal with the private school that as long as my kids maintain a 3.5 GPA or higher, that we can pull them out during the week. And when dad's home, and my weekend might be a Tuesday, Wednesday, because I traveled, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, came back home on Monday, and Tuesday, Wednesday is a weekend. We pull the kids out and we go to Disneyland or we go to the beach. And so it's a work-life mix. Or if I would speak at a fun venue like Manhattan, I would take my son Andrew with me. Or if I spoke in, let's say in Orlando, where there's downtown, where there's Disney World, I would take my daughter with me, and we'd spend an extra day, either in Manhattan, just doing fun adventures in the Empire State Building, or Chloe and I would go to the Wild Animal Park while we're out there in Orlando and I was speaking. And so a work-life mix works for an entrepreneur, and you really end up pouring into your kids the fact that, look, you can create your own income, However, you also have to find times to enjoy with your family that is different than the regular civilian who works 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and then has the weekends to do what they want. We're not like them. So we have a different mix. So that's thing number one. Thing number two is, and this is a line from Ed Milet, so I have to give Ed Milet credit. He said, be where your feet are. In other words, as entrepreneurs, we oftentimes start feeling guilty. We're working, we're not with our kids, they're home, they're but we're on our laptop, trying to make a funnel, trying to put up a post, trying to respond to DMs, and all of a sudden you feel the sense of guilt, and so you're mentally there even though you're physically here. And then when you're with your family, you're mentally working instead of being with them, and so you're kind of tuned out. If you could just be where your feet are. When I'm here at the HQ, I'm not looking at my phone and I'm not interested in texting friends and family until after 4 p.m. when my day is done. If there's an emergency, they can text me. I may periodically, take a little break, whether it's a little snack break or a restroom break, and I'll text my wife and text my kids, hope you guys are doing great. But there is no guilt of, gosh, I'm missing out, because I know that after 4 p.m. when I get home, I am there, and therefore I've got my notifications turned off from my phone, and therefore my CEO and any of my team and any of my franchisees, any of my coaching clients will have to wait till the next day. If there's a fire, they can call me and I'll pick up the phone. But if I am mentally checked into work while I'm with my family, I've done my family a disservice. If I'm mentally with my family while I'm at work, I've done my work a disservice. And so if we can be where our feet are and focus and concentrate on the work that we're doing, whether it's loving up our family or creating that next opportunity in business, you'll realize that you're really getting fulfillment from both of those areas.
So good. And I think we misinterpret maybe hard work, when we start working lots of volumes, lots of quantity, and we're busy, but maybe not really evaluating whether that is really giving us ROI on the investment of our time and our energy.
That's exactly right. And I got to tell you how right that is, because people will do, when I get a new coaching client, and it always kicks off with doing a half day here in person at my office, where we kind of blueprint what their goal is, their outcome goal, and then figure out ways to time collapse to get to the results in 6 months instead of a year or a year and a half. And they're always shocked when they walk away with just 2, maybe 3 marching orders. And inevitably, I always tell them, hey, when you leave here, within a couple of days, you'll have more questions, more ideas that will come to you, and you'll go, gosh, I wish I could have asked Bedros something. You don't have to wait for your coaching call to come up at the end of the month. You can just text me. It's part of the fee that you pay. And inevitably, that first text after they leave their half day, within 24 to 48 hours, is, Bedros, what more should I be doing? And I always reply back with more of the same. For me, for example, all I do is I do podcasts, whether I'm doing my own podcast or speaking on podcasts like yours. I run leadership meetings, and then I create content on my social media. How about this? I don't even create the content. My team creates the content. I post the content, as in I write the captions, because no one else is going to write as passionately as I am. I only have 3 things that I do, and I do it over and over again. Right before I jumped on this platform, I put up one of my video guys sent me a Dropbox link with some short videos in it that he had edited. And one of them I really liked. And so right before I jumped on this podcast with you, I posted that as a short video on YouTube and wrote a compelling caption. And then now I'm doing this podcast with you. And as soon as I get off this podcast, I'm literally meeting with the leadership team that runs the marketing and for all our brands. Her name is Lauren. Lauren and Andrew, them two together run the whole department where marketing is concerned. And so I do the same things over and over again and just constantly move the money and meaning needle in my life. Now, do I need to be editing videos? Do I need to be making my own videos? Do I need to be writing my own email broadcasts? Do I need to be making my own websites? No, it's when we take on all these tasks that we go, man, no one can outwork me. Okay, great. But I'm not interested in really, really hard work. I'm really interested in hard work that's compounded by smart work. Like what is the thing that you can do? Because my assistant, Joan can't run this podcast. But you did hear her voice, I'm sure, when she logged on, because I don't even know how to use a Zoom or like use Zencast. And so my team sets everything up for me. She hit the mute button, and then as she walked away, she goes, "Bedros, here's the mute button, unmute button, so you can unmute it." And Deborah's already there, because I don't know how to click the link in my email and set this thing up. That's how dumb I am, and that's how dumb I want to be. And so I
Stop
just
it.
go, yeah, that's how efficient I am, right? And
Yeah.
so it's really important for people to hear this, because I can tell you right now, Elon Musk is not turning the wrench on a rocket or Tesla. He is making high level decisions. He's doing the same 2 to 3 tasks over and over again that allows him to gain mastery over making these high level decisions, and then delegating to really smart people that he's put around him, just like I do, just like any great entrepreneur should.
So good. All right. Gold in that. I have last 2 questions. I want to honor your time. So you alluded to a couple of things that are tucked in here about you posted short videos, and I was noticing that. I mean, attention spans are really short. People consume things differently. People have the attention span of less than a guppy these days.
They do.
And the pandemic made it worse. I mean, they're consuming information differently, and there's greater different expectations about how it looks. And I myself had a membership prior to the pandemic, but now I feel like I have to up level because there's so many other choices. I've got to look at, okay, wait a minute, what are we doing now? And are we still solving the same problem in the best way? Where's the blue ocean right now?
The blue ocean is to be interesting and compelling in a niche. And here's what I found. In fact, 4 weeks ago, so I should fast forward, 5 months ago, I retired the Empire podcast. The Empire podcast was a podcast I did on business development, leadership, marketing, and sales. Did that for 4 years, 209 episodes. It's practically a PhD in being an entrepreneur. I retired that 5 months ago, and kind of, again, being the introvert, going back to what we talked about, I kept listening to my gut, listening to my radiance, and I found that the source was asking me to follow my greater calling these days, which is service to men. And so I have all these great companies, Fit Body Bootcamp, Truly Supplements, my coaching business, etc. My calling in the last 4 or 5 years has been really servitude for men who are suffering in silence, white knuckling through life, feeling like an island, and unfortunately suffering with depression, anxiety, etc. So we created an event called The Project, which is for men, and the project leads to a brotherhood where they're connected to each other, network, etc., and they get to help each other rise and elevate up to their higher levels and standards. And what I found is that the new calling was, hey, you got to create a long form podcast that just speaks to men about purpose, passion, addictions, vices, expectations, uh, being fit, eating right, keeping a positive mental attitude. Very different content than what I'm used to sharing. And of course, I'm like, God, I fought this thing for 4 months. Finally, I told my video team, guys, we're going to have to create the Bedros Keuilian show. It's going to be a very different show. I don't know how it's going to land, but I feel called to do this. And it's going to be long form, 20 to 40-minute episodes versus these short, punchy things that are blowing up on our Instagram and TikTok, etc. And sure enough, very first episode within 3 days blew up on YouTube to 186,000 views and growing. And now as we pump out an episode, like within days, it just, surpasses 6 figures. And the reason is that I am passionate about the topic. I have mastery on the topic because I am a man who suffered through all that stuff over the last 15 years of growing a business and dealing with so much hardship, etc. I come from abuse as a child and worked with a therapist to process through that. So the things that I've done to heal myself, I get to now talk about passionately. And what I found is that the blue oceans, Deborah, are where your passions and a niche market intersect. And if you could find what is the thing that you're passionate about, not what is the area that's making a lot of money right now, but what is the thing you're passionate about that you can talk about passionately to the point where you will fall up, just break apart in tears about it. And to me, it is about men not killing themselves. It is about men not medicating themselves with drugs and alcohol, pornography, infidelity. And so that is where I am at 48 years old in my life. I speak about that passionately at the project. But do you think I want to speak about that openly where I feel so exposed on YouTube? No. But the universe, the source, God said, this is what you're meant to do now. This is a new phase of life. And I fought it for 4 months and finally said, onward, let's do it. And the Bedros Keuilian show is blowing up to the tune of 15x more views than the Empire podcast that I've been running for 4 years. So the truth of the matter is where your passions and a niche market intersect is where you're going to find the blue oceans. And so I can't say necessarily this industry or that industry, but I can tell you that if you can find that intersection, that is the bluest ocean for you.
And can I add something? Because I think what you're also forgetting or just leaving out is that you're solving a problem.
Correct.
Yeah.
We always must be solving the problem. This morning I talked to a professional bodybuilder. By professional, I mean former Mr. Olympia, very recently former Mr. Olympia at the highest level. And he goes, people love to hear my story. And I had to stop him. Let's just call him Bob. I don't want to say his name. I said, Bob, people in the bodybuilding world love to hear your story. If you're looking to become a public speaker, your story does not matter. Your story needs to transform to a talk about the struggles that you experienced, the injuries that you had to overcome, how you overcame them mentally and emotionally and physically, what inner self-talk you had when you were climbing to the top of an industry, to the very top of it, like to be the very best human being for 2, 3, 4 years straight at this one thing, bodybuilding at the highest level, and how the audience could apply it to their life. If they're a mechanic, if they're a dentist, if they're a baker, they're a candlestick maker, whatever they might be. And he was like, oh, I go, yeah, your story doesn't matter to anyone other than people aspiring to become bodybuilders because they're fans. But if you're going to be a public speaker, you're going to go in front of financial advisors who have never met you. They're just going to see a big hunk of a man. And until you break down your story and say that the time that, hey, for you guys, the gym is somewhere where you go to get fit. For me, the gym was an office. For me, the gym is my paycheck. For me, the gym is how I built my platform. And he goes, oh, I get it. But for me, when I get a hernia, that literally can stop my income and literally put my family out in the streets. Whereas if you get injured in the gym, that's okay. You go to a doctor, you get a little surgery, you recover. Your income isn't affected. So let me tell you about how being a bodybuilder at the highest level has taught me these 7 things and how you could use it in any area of your life. And he was just blown away. I said, so if you want to work with me, you want me to coach you, you want me to mentor you, help you become a great speaker, you have to think about solving problems for the audience and not just talking about your story. And he had that aha moment. And I think oftentimes we forget that, especially in this area of Instagram, TikTok, where we can post amazing pictures of ourselves and the sexiest body parts. Here's the booty, here's the abs, here's the chest. That's all great. But what about how you struggled with confidence? What about how you struggled with body dysmorphia? What about how you struggled with eating disorders? Those are the things that's going to get the client, because if you can help that client understand that you solved the problem for yourself and now you're here to solve the problem for them, it is only then that they will exchange money for the solution.
Amen. That is awesome. All right, last question. You've answered this in so many ways, and listeners who were really listening intently, and I suggest to you listeners, play this one again. This is worth a second loop around whatever hike you just did. Say you're a trainer, Bedros, who did in person or in a gym pre-pandemic, or you're a health coach recently. Now you're doing online, on demand, virtual. You have access to the world, but nobody knows who you are. What do you do, and where would you invest your time, money, and energy?
My gosh, if I was a trainer and I was making that pivot to online coaching or health coaching, and it doesn't matter at what level, it doesn't matter if it's high price point, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 for a 90-day, fitness and fat loss program or health program, or something cheaper at a mass scale, $200, $300 for an 8-week, 6-week boot camp type thing. If it's online based, if it's virtual based, the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, all right, what are the best in the industry doing? So there's always the 1%ers. I'm going to go find the 1%ers. I'm going to study them. Number one. Number two, if they have coaches and mentors, I'm going to figure out who those coaches and mentors are, I'm going to pay for success. Because when we pay for, by the way, what a hypocritical thing for a coach not to have a coach, right? In any other industry, like athletes have great coaches. You don't see an athlete at their peak level without a coach. Yet you see coaches without coaches, and always, every single time, without fail, coaches who don't have coaches are the ones that are struggling because they're trying to figure it out on their own, and it's costing them more time, money, frustration, stress, and lost opportunities. And so I would, one, model success by seeing what the best out there are doing. Number two, find the best coaches and mentors in that industry and pay them so that I can time collapse my results. And then, of course, the third thing I would do is I would go from being a generalist, meaning there's so many online coaches. But if I could learn how to articulate a message by creating a podcast and a YouTube channel where I could speak specifically and passionately to a specific market, whether it's men who want to burn fat and get healthy, or women, or entrepreneurs, or one of my coaching clients, in fact, he's a registered dietitian, a health coach, who only works with type 1 diabetics. He only works with type 1 diabetics, and he does $50,000 to $60,000 per month. His name is Ben Thiel. And Ben is type 1 diabetic. He knows all about it, yet he was trying to be a dietitian to everybody. And when you're not working in a niche, you're nothing to nobody. But I said, Ben, you are jacked. You have type 1 diabetes. And most people think that if they have diabetes, that they cannot get jacked and their life will be forever ruined. Yet you figured it out. Why don't you work with type 1 diabetics instead? And he goes, man, I'm passionate about that. I know everything about that. I said, great. You can stop talking my ear off about it and start doing podcasts and YouTubes and put it all over your Instagram and TikToks. And within 4 months, he went from $9,000 a month as a online coach, kind of putzing along, to now $40,000 to $60,000. $40,000 is a bad month. $60,000 is a decent month to him. And it's because, again, passion and a niche market intersected. For him, it was the passion of being a specifically nutrition coach for type 1 diabetics. And that's the niche market. And he just blew up. And so more people need to do that. And of course, he's working with a coach, me. And before me, he had another coach. And to him, he just knows that what a hypocrite I would be if I'm asking people to get coaching, yet I'm too cheap and reluctant to invest in a coach.
Amazing. Great tips. That was gold. All right. Every listener here is going to want to know, how do I connect and get more Bedros? Although all of our listeners are pretty much ladies. Are you ignoring us? Man up.
No, I'm not. In fact, Man Up is short for You Man Up to Your Highest Potential. And chapter 1 in Man Up talks about how women have the greatest potential to man up, because there's no greater opportunities today than for women, and they need to step up and take what's theirs.
Thank you, Jesus. Amen. All right. Thanks so much. Is there a URL? Is there a social media link?
The best way is to find me on social media. I'm very active on YouTube and Instagram at Bedros Keuilian.
The easiest easy. Bedros, thank you so much for being here and for sharing all the gold. So many golden nuggets about how to do it today and right now.
Thank you for the opportunity, Deborah.
Okay, fitness and health professionals, now it's up to you. There's never been a time when the world needs you more than they do right now. So I want you to leave a message or a comment at fitnessmarketingmastery.com/fitnessmarketing secrets. And what are you waiting for?